Okay, so I will talk about today. Let me just move this, otherwise I can't see. Okay, some research inputs that I've gathered in the past 4 or 5 years around migrants' political participation in urban context through cultural practices. And more particularly, I would talk about the initiatives that are carried out by a group of undocumented migrants, and I will be a bit more precise on what I mean by that. So first of all, to put the framework of this, of this research project in which the data we present today have been gathered. So it was a project that aimed at studying the public opinion towards asylum seekers and refugees with a European cross-national perspective. So there was a macro approach, let's say, focused on public opinion and more quantitative data. And then we had a focus on the polarization of this public opinion on pro and anti-refugee actions at the local level in Belgium. So it was more micro perspective, meso and micro perspective. And we were also interested in analyzing the asylum seekers and refugees' perception of Belgium, of its asylum system and its reception policies, in this idea of studying, let's say, the relationship between both migrants and agents and institutions that are connected to the policy concerning the governance of migration. And so to study this aspect, and more particularly the micro and meso aspects, we focus on a set of case studies, which were reception centers, collective reception centers that were opened before the so-called crisis. So Amanda has already said, and I definitely share the way in which it is presented. Centers that were opened before 2015, centers that were have been open when the crisis emerged somehow, and also in some locations where there were no formal reception centers, but some informal settlements were organized and were the starting point of some forms of mobilization. And that's what I will talk about more particularly. Indeed, so the case study of which where I carried out research, it was Liège, so the city where I live and work, which is located in Wallonia, and where there was a group, and there is still a group of undocumented migrants that organized themselves to claim rights, and so to set in place a set of initiatives that I will talk about. And they did that starting from the occupation of inhabited buildings in the city. I will get back to that. So just to give some methodological inputs, I did some field work there between November 2017 and May 2018. Let's say some structured fieldwork, because fieldwork is kind of never finished with them, because I'm still in contact with the group. And so there has been the opportunity to update also some of the material collected. And so you have an overview here of the research actions carried out, some structured interviews, but also participant observation in the meetings, creative workshop, training session, and so on and so forth, that were organized by the group. And so I was focusing on two main axes of action of the group, and so action of research on the other side, which were the everyday issues that the group faced, of course, because of the fact that they were living without a residence permit, but also the initiative that they carried out to ensure political participation and also social-cultural participation, but also economic participation, and how they use also these tools to elaborate something. So a few more details on the methods, but also the words I used. So this research was about and with the members of what is called in French La Voix des Sans-Papiers. So this is the voice of without documents, so undocumented people, and it's a collective that was settled in Liège. So the idea was at the time of the research, and is still, to develop some participatory research tools in the sense that through participating to the initiatives that the group organized, which were artistic and cultural initiatives, that's what I will be focusing on. So the data that emerged from that kind of research was kind of collectively built. So through participating together, both researcher and research participants in the creation, in the elaboration of this data, and more particularly in the visual materials that are presented, and I will show you some of them. I just also wanted to be a bit more precise on why. So I use the word undocumented. It is so the translation of sans papier, which it's the word which for me translates better the word sans papier, which is a naming word. It means it is used in the field by the social actors themselves that identify themselves. Well, they are categorized as undocumented, but at the same time, they reappropriate this word, this notion, as a tool to claim rights, because it corresponds to the social positioning where they are placed in, but at the same time, the social positioning from which they claim their rights. And we will get back to this. And of course, undocumented is here meant as the result of a process of irregularization. So not as a kind of characteristic of the person, but as something, a situation in which the person finds it himself or herself because of the process of irregularization, which is connected so with the way in which the governance of migration works in contemporary times in Belgium and elsewhere. And you can see, so we won't have the time to read the quotes of the research participant, but you can have a look at them and maybe later. But so you see how this process of irregularization is also very much acknowledged by the members of the group, and the fact so of using the word undocumented is kind of let's say recognizing that this identity categorization operates, but at the same time, it can be the starting point for claiming rights. So this collective was created in 2015. So in the period after that was object of discourses around the crisis, and it has been created by a group of migrants that had whose asylum demand was rejected, or who found themselves in an irregular status because of other processes, and they were supported by a network of soutien. So this is the French word to say support, that were local citizens, local residents, helping them, first of all, with meeting basic needs. So with this occupation of inhabited buildings in the city, but then they helped also with facilitating somehow some networks, some social networks that allow for political mobilization, for taking some space in the city to claim their rights. There were different tools for mobilization that were developed. So the participation in local social, cultural, and economic life by working, by training, and various initiatives organized by the group, but also some form of protests and claims, as you can see. And so all the pictures that I used in this presentation are pictures that are publicly used by the group in their Facebook pages and so on, and other social media. And so the group also organized workshops, more particularly workshops where some artistic creations were made. And this is the focus of my presentation. In this image, you can see just the places where the group was living in occupation of buildings. And so without going into much details, I just wanted you to notice how there were different occupations, and the movement of the group, it was progressively toward the city center, actually. So where you see the city hall in the corner on the left, high left, And so this movement, which is very geographical, spatial, let's say, it also corresponds to metaphorically to the movement toward the fact of responding to basic needs, to the fact of participating to the political debate. So getting to the center of the city also to elaborate something. So it is important, of course, to consider the context, and that is where also the superdiversity issue somehow intervene. So Liège has been theorized by some scholars, including me, as a sanctuary city. What does it mean? Well, first of all, we need to recall that is presented as, and it's indeed the fruit of historical movement, migration movement, and so it is also presented as an historical site of migration. There are local discourses on the superdiversity of the city, but also local discourses and policies on anti-racism. More recently, the City of Welcome initiative has been promoted. Or City of Welcome is the kind of amic word, but it corresponds to sanctuary initiatives. And so it's a way of positioning itself from the city as welcoming to migrants, notwithstanding their resident status and despite the hostile national environment, so at the level of the federal state. So cities as Liège are considered as spaces of resistance to the restrictive approach of state migration governance, in a context where the governance of migration is multi-level. So there are a set of actors, that intervene in the governance of migration. And within this context, what is interesting to note is that there's an rationale of the transversality of the struggle, which means, I don't know what it was, which means that so there are different profiles of, well, people with different profiles that share some common mobilization because their social positioning are intersecting. What does it mean? It means that, of course, migrants of the group La Voix des Sans-Papiers, they are migrants in irregular stages without a residence permit, but at the same time, they are men, they are women, they're people who work or people who are looking for work, they're people doing some training and so on and so forth. And so they share mobilization with other non-migrants, for example, other local residents that do have the same claim for a better work condition, for example, or for access to education and so on and so forth. So this idea of struggles being transversal to the social positionings of people in the city is very much diffused. It's a discourse that we can really hear. And at the same time, we can conceptualize also in relation with this idea of superdiversity and the intersectionality of the experiences of the people and how so they can also meet each other into these struggles. And here you see some quotes of so the mayor, but also the director of a local association, so explaining how this functions. So you have some images of the activities that are organized. So you see as starting from the left, high left, a sewing workshop, more particularly attended by women, a writing workshop, a cooking workshop, and then some kind of open doors initiatives that are carried out in the very same occupation of the group. Well, now they've moved, and I won't talk about that because it will complicate a bit the presentation, but let's see what was happening in the years of this research. So my focus is on the way in which arts participates into this dynamic, and so how it facilitates the political participation. And I'm talking about a set of artistic workshops and creations, such as painting, writing, but also audiovisual workshop, exhibition, theater, play, and so you have some images about that. And Daniel, I can't see you, so if I'm out of time, let's just talk and tell me. Okay.
Everything's fine.
Okay, perfect. And also some documentaries so that were organized by the group. So I will give you some examples, and it won't be possible to watch the different movies, but some are available online. So this is a theater play which has had a lot of success. It was created starting from a writing workshop where so members of the group, but also some other local residents participated. And so the idea here was to play with the word song. So in French, it means without, and it's the same sound of 100. And so the idea is, what does it mean to be sans papier? What does it mean to be undocumented? To have 100 problem, 100 nightmares. If I translate some of the words, so to be without family, without home, without respect, to have 100 humiliation, and so on and so forth. So the play is kind of organized around this, the use of these words, but to make people, to make audience understand what the situation of undocumented migrants is. There are lots of initiatives of this type that have been made by the group. So here it was the exhibition. So again, of some installations that were created during the writing workshop. And the exhibition, it was in an occupied building in a neighborhood in Liège, which is a kind of bourgeois neighborhood, but it opens the door somehow of its building to artists during a specific time of the year. And so the group participated to this initiative, which is a city initiative, as a group of artists, although non-professional. Well, not all are professional artists, but there are some who are, or at least have been trained for. And so here the idea was, again, to, as you see, for example, in the installation in the middle, you can listen to the story of migration, and more particularly the life experiences of the undocumented migrant women of a woman of the group. Or in the right side of the slide, you can see some claims. So why are we without paper, and when will be able to meet again our families? This kind of yes, you have here some examples. So art is used to raise awareness on the situation of undocumented migrants. And so the experience of exile that is narrated into this installation is transformed somehow in an artistic piece, and it's communicated to the artistic work. So the important thing is, of course, the message of the work, so what the artistic work means, what it wants to say somehow, but also there's an aesthetic value that is somehow looked for. Well, I mean, also the people that participate to this workshop, as I was saying, some of them are professional artists, and so the idea is to have something which also meets some kind of aesthetic norms, which are, of course, questioned at the same time, but I mean, there are both these value of the work, the message and the aesthetic value. And art encourages also exchange and knowledge of the other. So it is conceived as a mean to create connection, to facilitate relationship, and to facilitate the dialogue. It is used to make visible the individuals, but also the and their life experience, and more particularly experience of migration, but also more precisely the inequalities that they experience. And so, yes, you have, for example, this quote of an artist, a non-profit organization member saying, with a cultural and artistic approach, the members of the group, they produce something that is meaningful and that will resonate with an audience. And so the idea is also to have a broader a larger number of people that are reached by this kind of claim. And so, yes, talk about us, the undocumented immigrants who exist. So the idea is also to give visibility to the situation of undocumented migrants. So to give you a couple of examples, this is a painting by a member of the group of the queue in front of the immigration office. So people who are waiting for to register their demand. And you have also to know that at some point, the number of demands to be registered per day, there was a quota that was put by the ministry at that time. And so there were people queuing during the night to be sure to be in the quota, which was very low. Of course, it was something like 50 people per day. So it was really, really low. And what is interesting is also that all these initiatives, so the workshop, the artistic workshop that lead to the creation of some arts pieces as the theater play or the installations and so on, they are often recorded. So the process of artistic creation is recorded by the members themselves, and more particularly by a person who is in charge of the audiovisual workshop. And so everything is kind of gathered and also kept for the records of regularization of the people that, of course, also try to regularize their status, but also as a memory of the activities of the group and a memory of their political participation. So art is used to speak out, and another example is this workshop that was organized around the figure of the clown. And so the idea here is to put humor at the service of let's say, getting people get out of the situation of marginality in which they are living, and so to reverse somehow the status of things through humor. Of course, this also interact with corporality, sensoriality, so it's very bodily process to become a clown and become, and let's say, perform on the scene. And also it's a way of challenging some cultural codes, the codes of the migrant people or the codes of the local environment, the artistic, but also social and cultural local environment. And this happens with discourse, but not only with discourse, not only with words, but also with, of course, again, the body and the posture and so on. And this is an example, so of one of the members of the group who becoming a clown on the stage. So this was the occasion for him to talk about his situation of being illegal in Belgium, as you can see in this excerpt. So it's the way in which he explained. And so here the idea was so to use the nose of the clown to become someone else, but at the same time, so an actor on the stage somehow, but at the same time, an actor who was talking about the lived experience of the person that it was performing about. So it's kind of becoming someone else, but at the same time, using his own experience and put it on the stage again to be visible, to make it visible. And the birth of a clone is a real process where the person again becomes someone else, but again embedded in his or her own history. And so it is a video showing the bodily process of becoming the clone as it was taught by the person, by the artist that was in charge of the workshop. And so it was interesting to see really this process of transformation that was supposed to change a bit the rules, and so to put migrants themselves in the position, in a different social position, the one of actors on the stage that could talk about themselves, about their life experience and so on. And again, this was object of, and this is also available online, this was object of a video made made by the very same members of the group to, again, testify the process of creation, but also the objectives of this process. So to get some conclusion on this, based on the analysis of these examples and of the activities of the group. So we are talking about people who, because of their intersecting social positioning, they are excluded. They do not have access to formal means of participation. They do not necessarily have the place to take to take a voice in political debate in the city, and so their freedom of expression is restricted, and so that's where arts intervene. It intervenes so to create other spaces of political participation, and of course freedom of expression, but also of movement and travel. They are restricted. And so, for example, the documentaries that were created, some of them, they were showcased in some conferences in France or in other countries, but those who have made them couldn't move until to those places to present themselves. They also face constraint on employment. They can be employed but in informal jobs. And so, again, that's where arts intervenes. So it means that arts became a political tool. It helps with creating spaces where claims can be made and where their story can be made be visible. And so we can conceptualize this in many forms, of course, in many ways. But here the idea is to see that as the way of acquiring, of exerting citizenship through a process of subject making. I'm referring to Aiwa Ong. So from the social positionings that the people occupy, they still can create, and although these social positionings are marginalized, they still can create some spaces of participation, and so exert forms of citizenship that are different from the formal, let's say, participation means that are excluded to them. And so, yes, so it's a channel, as we can see in this couple of quotes. Art is seen as a channel for the struggle of undocumented people, where people who listen to us can make us heard more. So again, an issue of visibility. And at the same time, this is conceived as building context. So we need context every time we do the play. It's like having a job interview. We have to give it our all. So it's really a process. It's really an engagement into this artistic process to create this connection and again, these spaces of participation. Yes, I finished. Okay. Thanks a lot for listening, and I hope it was clear, and I'm available, of course. I'm very much looking forward to the exchange. So let me stop sharing so that I see you again.